Good to see you. So look, the single biggest event in banking is coming up, right? I think anyone who's anyone would know what I'm talking about, and that is the 2025 annual BIAN Summit this year in Chicago. So with the summit coming up, I think there's going to be a lot of questions on people's minds. There's a few things I'd love to clear up with you since I've got you on the line. So if you're good with it, can I fire off a couple of questions?
Yes, of course. Good to see you again, Nishan. Yeah, let's go.
Fantastic. Look, uh, let's start at the top, right? If I'm a CIO or a chief architect, I've already looked into buy-in. I've decided I can see the value in it. We have to adopt this. What does practical adoption look like in those first few months?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. So really, th this debate has been going on for a while, in banks, which is, whether they should do a big bang approach or do things in parts, in pieces, in chunks. And often this idea of trying to break the big project into small, manageable chunks is great, and it fits in nicely with Bayern. So when we are looking at this as a project, the best thing to do is to take a small use case. A use case in banking, in Bayern, we call these business scenarios. So things like perhaps initiating a loan or underwriting a mortgage or making a payment, things like this. So you take one of these use cases and then within that use case, you try to map that to Bayern and try to implement the Bayern components in a Bayern compliant way within your bank. I would also say that even in budgeting terms, what often helps is if you have a running project where you are doing something like this, perhaps you're upgrading your KYC process, integrating new fintechs, then it's a great point as well to bring in a standardized reference architecture like Bayern as part of that project. And it's an easier sell to do it.
Makes perfect sense. And look, one of the things, I hear sometimes is people think, okay, when you think architecture and you think of these enterprise kind of frameworks, you kind of naturally go to, I have to lay some groundwork first, right? I have to lay this across the entire enterprise before I can do anything. And I think, what makes Buy-in so special is because it is a pattern-based framework, you can actually sort of pick it up piece by piece with the confidence that it will all hang together as you progress, right? It's already been designed in a way that you get that consistency. Sometimes you see these pictures of bridges where they started building from both ends and they get to the middle and it's off by a few meters and you see a bunch of people sitting around scratching their heads going, how did this happen? I think the beauty of buy-in is it's designed in such a way you're not going to have that problem. So I think your suggestion of pick a project or pick a domain, makes perfect sense. So with that, what in terms of tooling, how do you make buy-in stick in delivery and not just in slides and presentations?
Yeah, that's again another really good question and very much at the heart of what the Buy-in board is trying to promote, which is really adoption of the standard. And to make it happen, often a lot of standards bodies kind of stop at that point, as you mentioned, slideware, or documentation of what the architecture is. At Bayern, I think we do it slightly differently. So, in addition to all of that, we're also actively creating a set of tools nowadays, especially leveraging AI, which helps banks and tech providers who are doing it for banks, for instance, to implement Bayern. So, we provide a huge range of tools, if you like, to help people implement Bayern. And that can start with things like providing more technical specifications for the standard itself in the form of API specs, as well as tooling to get there, tooling to help banks and tech providers get there, like mapping to the BIAN standards at its various levels, like at the APIs or the business object model level, or even more to really gain the knowledge about BIAN in a more modern way, like in a chat type way, like you would do with ChatGPT. So we have our own trained AI models with the BIAN data and specifically with the BIAN data and the BIAN knowledge. So that also helps people who are trying to implement BIAN to do it in the current way, asking questions, getting answers, giving use cases, and getting recommendations, things like this.
Fantastic. And obviously, it sounds like in this modern era of AI, BIAN is absolutely keeping pace and embracing AI and kind of weaving it in from what you're saying, right? So that's amazing. Without giving away too much, because obviously, we want people to come to the summit and experience it firsthand. Some of these tools you speak of, will there be some reveal, some sort of further information shared in November at the summit?
Yes, absolutely. So, you highlighted two key points there. The work we're doing with AI and what we are doing for the summit. So, with AI, the way we look at it in BIAN is we are really at the cutting edge of technology at BIAN, and we are trying to push the boundaries of what can be done in banking with technology, with AI especially. And as we all know, AI is evolving at a breakneck pace at the moment. So, and I would like to think that we are also trying to, or doing, in fact, doing quite well, keeping up with it. So, in terms of that, some of the things that are quite obvious is we have the BIAN API specs, and we have tooling that is AI driven, based on BIAN trained data with AI models based on BIAN trained data that help banks and tech providers to map existing banking systems and solutions to the BIAN specifications, and the AI makes suggestions on these mappings, even at an attribute level. The AI makes suggestions on what BIAN functionality maps with certain part of a bank's system functionality and all of that. We will reveal more tools like around application mapping. So if you have an application, whether it's documentation about it or indeed code that you have in your current systems, we will bring out tools, or we will showcase tools that will be able to help you map those into the BIAN standard and take it a step further, in fact, and allow you to generate code out of it in more modern programming languages such as Node, such as Python, and so on. So that is a key thing we're going to showcase in the summit, how you can generate BIAN specified banking components from the BIAN standard in a fully automated way. I mean, obviously, this is a framework that will be generated, and there will be a need for developers and business analysts to come in there and add to it and enhance it. But you have a very good starting point, and that's the basic idea behind it. Apart from that, some of the things we're also doing, and it will become clearer in the summit, is we're doing a lot of work with agentic AI, with the various agentic AI protocols, and we will have a lot to show around how BIAN helps you enhance the agentic AI capabilities in a banking context to create some amazing solutions. And it will be really groundbreaking to see some of these things in November.
Fantastic. I'm hearing three things there, which is brilliant. So the first is BIAN is absolutely leaning into the rise of AI, taking advantage of all these new breakthroughs and developments that have come out in the last what is it, maybe 18, 24 months. So that's one. The second is the tooling is not just scratching the surface. It's not just generating more slideware. This is really practical tooling that will help banks, fintechs, vendors who are adopting BIAN to really accelerate that adoption at a very practical level, which is, again, amazing. And the third thing I'm hearing is there is still a role for specialists, your BAs, your solution architects, your distinguished engineers, etc., to come in and leverage those tools, but on top of that, do extension, customization, all the things that make BIAN unique to a particular bank. That's still very much in the mix. We're not replacing that, but it kind of works in synergy with the tooling that you've produced. So I think that's absolutely amazing. And so obviously, I think it's a huge draw card, to come to this summit, see this firsthand, and then obviously, Arnab, I'm sure there'll be access to folks like yourself, your team, and some of the other BIAN experts, where people can, really chew through this and understand what it means and dive into detail and really get to grips with it. So I think that's a huge draw card for the summit, which is brilliant. So moving on from that, as banks sort of pick up BIAN and really start to apply it, obviously, banks are not these isolated ecosystems, right? They align to other standards. They interoperate with lots of other third party ecosystem players, etc. So another question that always comes up is, how does BIAN play with other banking standards, right? And there are region specific standards, there's global standards, but nevertheless, in the banking world, there's many that have gone before, who have laid out in some particular area something more prescriptive, which banks have picked up. So does that mean that they have to sort of discard that? Is it throwaway work? Will it conflict with BIAN adoption? How do you see that playing out?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things we try to always use as a principle at BIAN is that by implementing BIAN, you are not moving away from any of the other well-recognized standards that are around, that are related and in a similar space to BIAN. And we can take concrete examples of that. So, Gartner, for example, came out with this concept of packaged business capabilities in a composable architecture for banks. And the BIAN service domains, the BIAN building blocks, if you like, of a bank's functionality, the service domains are totally aligned with these packaged business capabilities as specified by Gartner. And Gartner cites them as well. Then, you can look at other standards like ISO 20022. You will find that the BIAN business object model is, in most parts, either a subset of or inspired by ISO 20022. So very well aligned. We have links to the ISO 20022 business component model and its attributes and so on. You look at other things like more technical standards like domain-driven design. The BIAN service domains are very well aligned to that as well. The service domains are aggregates. You have services and entities and so on. So really, wherever you look, the BIAN standard fits very well with a lot of the other prevalent standards around. And by implementing BIAN, you're often also implementing all these other standards. So that's one of the beauties of getting into BIAN and using BIAN as your reference architecture and indeed your standard.
Yeah, amazing. The picture I'm getting in my head as you talk is a hub and spoke kind of a wheel, right? There's standards as they relate to payments or a certain regulation or open banking or whatever, and they all kind of sit there. But what I'm seeing and hearing in what you're saying is that BIAN is really that kind of hub that anchors and complements and maybe even is a foundation for implementing these other standards, but doing it in a way that kind of all comes together for a banking model, which I think was what was lacking in the industry all this time. So look, that's amazing. The last question, right, for our viewers, when with everything we've heard, what next? Where do they go for hands-on guidance? How do they get involved?
Yeah, of course. I mean, obviously, visit us at the summit if you can. And if you can't, there's also many other routes. So we have portal.bian.org. That's a great place to go in to look at all our assets in terms of the standard itself, whether it's our service domain specs, whether it's our banking use cases, which we call business scenarios, or it's our API specifications. A lot of our tooling is accessible from there as well. Some of it is only accessible to members, but some of it is also accessible to freely to the public. And then obviously, we talked about some of the new capabilities that we are going to bring in, around service domain application generation, code generation, all this. So one of the key announcements, if you like, in this summit will be around this sandbox where people can basically take a BIAN specification, generate the code, and assemble their own use case with test data and all of that. So, and really, this concept is still evolving as AI itself is evolving, agentic AI and the components of it is evolving. And it's almost impossible to say today what we will showcase in the summit, because what we'll showcase is probably going to be a lot more than what we know today. So really, watch out for it and try to be there if you can.
Exciting times. Fantastic. That's just, look, Arnab, thank you. That's been very, very helpful. I think those watching, if you were on the fence before or didn't know what to do next, I think hopefully you've taken away a lot from this. So thank you for your time. And I definitely look forward to seeing you at the summit. I'm going to grab you and grill you on some of these tools and learn a bit more about them.
Thanks, Nishan. Great talking to you too.
Thanks. Take care.